They say that family is supposed to be your safe haven, but sometimes the deepest wounds come from those closest to you. When my daughter-in-law humiliated me at my own Thanksgiving table after 40 years of holiday dinners, I never expected it would lead me to uncover secrets that would change everything. What started with a comment about my mashed potatoes ended with a decision that would reshape our family forever. They never expected this quiet grandmother to fight back. Subscribe now to witness how one humiliating comment at Thanksgiving changed everything about my family forever. The timer on the oven chimed, and I wiped my hands on the worn apron that had belonged to my mother. It still had the faint stain from cranberry sauce from Thanksgiving 1982, the year my son Michael graduated high school. 43 years I'd been cooking Thanksgiving dinner in this kitchen. 43 years of the same recipes, the same traditions, the same love poured into every dish. Mom, when are we eating? Cassandra is getting hungry. Michael's voice drifted in from the living room where the football game blared on the television. 20 minutes, I called back, sliding the turkey out to baste it one final time. The rich aroma of sage and thyme filled the kitchen of my colonial-style home in Willowbrook, Connecticut, where I'd lived since Gerald and I bought it in 1979. Gerald had been gone for 8 years now, but I still cooked as if he were coming to the table, carving knife in hand. At 68, I was slowing down, but Thanksgiving was my domain. Michael and his wife Cassandra had been married for 15 years, and their twins, Emma and Ethan, were now 13. They lived just 30 minutes away in New Haven, where Michael worked as a hospital administrator and Cassandra ran her interior design business. I saw them monthly, usually when I drove over with a casserole or a batch of cookies, but Thanksgiving was special.
It was when they came to me.
This year, Michael's sister Judith had flown in from Seattle with her husband Tom. My youngest, Rebecca, was supposed to come from Boston with her partner, but they'd canceled last minute, something about a work emergency. It was just as well. Rebecca always brought tension to the table with her political opinions. I placed the crystal gravy boat, a wedding gift from Gerald's mother, on the dining room table, which I'd set the night before with my grandmother's china and sterling silver flatware. The candles were lit, casting a warm glow over the pressed linen tablecloth. "It smells wonderful, Betty," Judith said, walking into the dining room. Her hair was shorter than when I'd last seen her, dyed a shade of auburn that was too young for her 55 years.
But I kept that thought to myself. Thank you, dear.
Would you tell everyone dinner's ready? Soon they were all seated around the table, Michael at one end, where his father used to sit, Cassandra beside him in a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly pension. The twins sat across from each other, their eyes glued to phones, despite my rule about no electronics at the table. Judith and Tom filled out the other side. I brought in the turkey on my grandmother's platter, the one with the faded blue rim, and placed it in front of Michael. "Beautiful as always, Mom," he said, standing to carve. At least he still remembered that much of our tradition. The bowls of food made their way around the table. Mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, sweet potatoes with a marshmallow topping that the twins had always loved, homemade cranberry sauce, not that jellied stuff from a can, and my special cornbread stuffing with sausage and pecans. "Judith, how's the gallery doing?" I asked, passing the gravy to Tom. "We're doing well. Had a successful showing last month with a new artist from Portland. Very modern, very relevant." I nodded as if I understood what made art relevant these days. Cassandra spooned a small amount of mashed potatoes onto her plate, then paused, fork hovering over them. "Betty, did you use margarine in these?" "No, real butter. Same recipe I've always used." I smiled, though something in her tone made me uneasy. She took a small bite, then placed her fork down. "They seem different. I assure you, it's the same recipe my mother used and her mother before her." Michael glanced at his wife, then quickly focused on cutting the turkey. "It's just that," Cassandra continued, pushing the potatoes to the side of her plate. "Presentation and taste are so important, especially for the holidays." She turned to the twins. "Remember the Thanksgiving we had at the Richardsons last year? Their chef made those truffle mashed potatoes with the gold flakes." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Those were amazing." I felt my face flush. Well, I'm afraid we don't have a chef in this house.
Just me.
That's what I mean, Cassandra said, her voice taking on that tone she used when she was trying to be helpful, but was anything but. These traditional recipes are quaint, but they're a bit embarrassing when you're used to more sophisticated flavors. The table went silent. Even the twins looked up from their phones. Embarrassing? The word hung in the air between us. Oh, Mom, she doesn't mean anything by it, Michael said quickly. Cassandra just has a very refined palate from all those fancy restaurants she reviews for her blog. I absolutely mean something by it, Cassandra said, placing her napkin beside her plate. Betty, you're family, so I can be honest. The food is always the same every year. The same bland recipes, the same heavy dishes, and honestly, it's a bit, well, outdated. Don't you think it's time to try something new? Maybe let someone else host.
Ich zerrte her.
This woman who had married my son. This woman who sat at my table in my home and called the food I had lovingly prepared embarrassing. I've been making Thanksgiving dinner for this family since before you were born, Cassandra, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. And that's exactly my point, she replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. Maybe it's time to pass the torch. I'd be happy to host next year. I know a wonderful caterer who does an Asian fusion Thanksgiving menu that's absolutely divine. Michael cleared his throat. Maybe we should discuss this another time. I don't see why, Cassandra continued. Betty's getting older. It must be such a burden to prepare all this food. I'm just offering to help. The twins were watching now, their eyes darting between their mother and me. I could see Judith's jaw clench tight, her hand gripping her fork too hard. It's not a burden, I said, each word measured. It's a joy to cook for my family. Of course it is, Cassandra said with a wave of her hand. But times change. Traditions evolve. And frankly, these recipes, she gestured at the food spread across the table, they're just not what people eat anymore. I eat them, Tom said suddenly, his mouth full of stuffing. This is delicious, Betty. Cassandra shot him a look. You'd eat anything, Tom. Mom's been making this meal for decades, Judith interjected. You can't just, and maybe that's the problem, Cassandra cut in. Decades of the same thing. Don't you think it's a bit boring? I looked down at my plate, at the food I had spent days preparing. The turkey I'd woken up at 5 to put in the oven, the pies I'd baked yesterday, rolling out the dough by hand because store-bought never tasted the same. If you find my cooking so embarrassing, I said finally, my voice steadier than I expected, perhaps you should have mentioned it before you agreed to come to dinner. Mom, Michael said, a warning in his voice. No, Michael. Your wife has made herself clear. I stood up, my napkin falling to the floor. Excuse me for a moment. I walked to the kitchen, my back straight, my heart pounding. Through the swinging door, I could hear the murmur of voices, Michael's low, placating tone, Cassandra's defensive response. In the kitchen, I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles white. The pain in my chest wasn't just from hurt feelings. It was deeper, a realization that had been building for years, but that I'd refused to acknowledge. I was becoming irrelevant to them. My home, my cooking, my traditions, they were seen as outdated, embarrassing relics from another time. I opened the drawer where I kept my recipe cards, yellowed with age, some stained with butter or vanilla extract. My mother's handwriting on some, mine on others. Generations of women in my family passing down not just recipes, but love, care, history. The kitchen door swung open and Michael entered. Mom, I'm sorry. You know how Cassandra gets. She didn't mean anything by it. I turned to face my son, really looking at him. The boy I had raised, the man who now sat silently while his wife belittled his mother. She meant every word, Michael, and you let her say it. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father, it made my heart ache. She's just trying to help. You are getting older, Mom. Maybe it is time to let someone else take over the hosting duties. Is that what you think, too? That my cooking is embarrassing? No, of course not. But he didn't meet my eyes. It's just that times change. Food trends change. Food trends. I repeated the words, tasting bitter. Your father loved my cooking. Every Thanksgiving, he would say it was the best meal of the year. Dad's been gone for 8 years. Mom. The words hit me like a slap. And that means his opinions no longer matter? That my cooking, which was good enough for 40 years, is suddenly embarrassing. That's not it's exactly what you meant. I straightened my shoulders. Go back to the table, Michael. Tell your wife I'll be out in a minute. After he left, I stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of my labor. The dirty pots and pans, the turkey baster, the potato masher, the tools of a lifetime spent nurturing, feeding, loving my family. Something shifted inside me at that moment. A resolve, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I had spent my life being the accommodating one, the peacekeeper, the mother who put everyone else's needs before her own. But I was 68 years old. How many more Thanksgivings did I have left? How many more chances to stand up for myself? I took off my apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. Then I walked back to the dining room where uncomfortable silence reigned. I've been thinking, I said, standing at the head of the table. You're right, Cassandra. Times do change, and it's time for a change in this family. I looked at each of their faces. Judith's concerned, Tom's uncomfortable, the twins confused, Michael's wary, and Cassandra's triumphant. I'll be making a phone call tomorrow, I continued, one that I should have made a long time ago. But first, let's enjoy this embarrassing dinner I've prepared. It will, after all, be the last one I host. I sat down and picked up my fork, the weight of my decisions settling over me like a mantle. After decades of putting others first, it was finally time to put myself first. And that phone call tomorrow would be just the beginning. I barely slept that night. The bedroom I'd shared with Gerald for 40 years felt especially empty as I stared at the ceiling, replaying Cassandra's words over and over in my mind. Embarrassing. After everyone had left earlier than usual, the tension having sucked all joy from the evening, I'd mechanically cleaned the kitchen, wrapping leftovers no one had asked to take home. The morning light filtered through the curtains Gerald and I had picked out together when we first moved in. I reached for my glasses on the nightstand and caught sight of our wedding photo. We were so young then, me just 23, Gerald 25, both of us believing we had all the time in the world. I made my coffee and carried it to the small desk in the corner of the living room where I kept my important papers. The grandfather clock Gerald had inherited from his father ticked steadily, a comforting rhythm in the quiet house. My fingers trembled slightly as I pulled out the business card I'd been holding on to for nearly 2 years. Martin Greenberg, attorney at law. I'd met him at a senior center seminar about estate planning. He'd been kind, patient with the endless questions from the room full of widows and widowers. I'd taken his card, thinking I should update my will someday. That someday was today. I dialed the number, surprised when he answered directly. Mr. Greenberg, this is Betty Harmon. We met at the Willowbrook Senior Center. I'd like to make an appointment to discuss my estate. The following Tuesday, I sat in Martin Greenberg's office, a modest space with law books lining the walls and a window overlooking Willowbrook's small town square. At 72, Martin was older than me, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a full head of silver hair. So, Mrs. Harmon, what brings you in today? I took a deep breath. I need to change my will completely. He nodded, no judgment in his expression. I see. And what changes did you have in mind? For the next hour, I outlined my plans to him. The house in Willowbrook that was fully paid off, the savings account and investments Gerald had so carefully managed, the life insurance policy that had paid out when he died. All of it had been left to my 3 children in equal shares in my current will. And now, Martin asked, now I want to make some changes. I sat up straighter. The house was meant to be a legacy, a place for family gatherings, but it seems those traditions no longer matter. Martin took notes as I spoke, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he looked up at me. These are significant changes, Betty. Are you certain this is what you want? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He nodded. Then I'll draw up the paperwork. It will take a few days. As I drove home, I felt lighter somehow. The humiliation of Thanksgiving was still there, but now it was accompanied by something else, a sense of purpose, of taking control. My phone rang that evening as I was watering the African violets on the kitchen windowsill. It was Judith. "Mom, I've been thinking about Thanksgiving. The way Cassandra spoke to you was completely out of line." Yes, it was. I agreed, no longer feeling the need to smooth things over. "Michael should have stood up for you." I placed the watering can down. "Yes, he should have." A pause. "Are you okay? You sound different." "I'm fine, Judith."
Better than fine, actually.
"I'm making some changes." "What kind of changes?" "Just taking care of some long overdue business." I changed the subject. "How's the gallery?" Judith let me deflect, but I could sense her concern. After we hung up, I sat in Gerald's old armchair, the one I could never bring myself to get rid of. What would he think of what I was doing? I closed my eyes and could almost hear his voice. "About time, about damn time." The next few days passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Martin was efficient, and by Friday, I was back in his office signing the new documents. "Once this is filed, it's official," he said, watching as I signed my name with a steady hand. "Though you can always change it again in the future." "I won't be changing my mind," I assured him. On Sunday, Michael called. I'd been expecting it. "Mom, Judith mentioned you were making some changes. Is everything okay?" I stirred the soup I was making for my dinner. "Just a single serving now." "Everything's fine, Michael." What kind of changes was she talking about? "Just getting my affairs in order." "Nothing for you to worry about." "Your affairs?" "Mom, are you sick? Is there something you're not telling us?" The concern in his voice almost made me waver. "Almost."
I'm perfectly healthy."
Just being practical. At my age, it's important to have everything organized. "Well, do you need help with anything?" "Cassandra is great with organization. She could come over." "No," I said firmly. "I've taken care of it." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd had countless family meals over the decades. I remembered Michael learning to read at that table, Judith doing her science projects, Rebecca arguing with her father about politics. Years of birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners. The phone rang again.
Cassandra this time.
I let it go to voicemail. Her message was all artificial sweetness. "Betty, it's Cassandra. I've been thinking about Thanksgiving, and I feel just terrible about how things went. I was wondering if we could have lunch this week. Just us girls. Call me back when you can." I deleted the message without returning the call. That night, I pulled out the photo albums that filled the bottom shelf of the bookcase in the living room. There we were, our little family through the years. Michael's high school graduation, Judith's wedding, Rebecca's college acceptance, Gerald, and me on our 40th anniversary just months before his diagnosis. I lingered on a photo from Thanksgiving 1998. Michael had brought his college girlfriend home, not Cassandra. She wouldn't come along until years later after his first marriage ended. In the photo, we were all laughing, gathered around the same dining table, the same china plates filled with the same embarrassing food. What had changed? When had my cooking, my home, my traditions become something to be tolerated rather than cherished? As I closed the album, I realized it wasn't just about the food. It was about respect, about valuing the experiences and traditions that had shaped our family, about acknowledging that while times change, some things like basic kindness should remain constant. The following week, I had my hair done at Marion's salon downtown, where I'd been going for 30 years. I bought a new blouse at the department store. Deep blue, a color Gerald always said brought out my eyes. Small changes, but they felt significant. "You look different, Betty," Marion said as she styled my hair.
Good.
"Different." I smiled at my reflection. "I feel different." On the way home, I stopped at the grocery store and ran into Helen Tucker, my neighbor from down the street. "Betty, I haven't seen you since before Thanksgiving. How was your holiday?" I considered giving my usual answer. "Fine, lovely. The family was all here." But instead, I told her the truth. It was enlightening. Helen raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Well, the community center is having a potluck this Saturday. You should come, bring one of your famous pies." I nodded. Maybe I will. As I drove home, I realized that for the first time in years, I was looking forward to something. Not a family obligation, not a holiday I was expected to host, but something just for me. The phone was ringing as I walked in the door. Michael again. I let it ring. The community center potluck turned out to be exactly what I needed. I brought my apple pie, the same one Cassandra had dismissed as basic last Christmas, and placed it on the dessert table alongside store-bought cookies and boxed cake mixes. No one here called my cooking embarrassing. Betty, so glad you could make it. Helen waved me over to a table where several other women sat. I recognized most of them from around town. Marge from the library, Doris who ran the flower shop, a few others whose faces were familiar, even if their names escaped me. We don't see you at these things much, Marge said, pulling out a chair for me. Usually with your family on weekends, aren't you? I settled into the chair. Not today. The conversation flowed easily around me. Town gossip, complaints about property taxes, someone's grandson getting into college, normal everyday talk that didn't feel like walking through a minefield. I found myself laughing at Doris's story about a groom who'd fainted at the altar last week, knocking over an entire arrangement of lilies. Betty, didn't your youngest work at the university in Boston? Helen asked, passing me a plate of deviled eggs. Rebecca, yes, she's in the linguistics department. My granddaughter's looking at schools. Is it a good program? I realized with a start that I barely knew anymore. Rebecca, and I spoke maybe 3 times a year now. When had that happened? When had I become so disconnected from my children's lives that I couldn't even answer a simple question about where they worked? I think it is, I said finally. But you should have your granddaughter look into it directly. After the potluck, a smaller group moved to the card tables set up in the corner. I hadn't played bridge in years. Not since the monthly games Gerald and I used to host. But the rules came back quickly. We meet every Saturday, Marge told me as she dealt the cards. You should join us. We're always looking for a fourth. By the time I drove home that evening, something had shifted. I'd spent 5 hours not thinking about Thanksgiving, not replaying Cassandra's words, not feeling hurt by Michael's silence. 5 hours just being Betty Harmon. Not someone's mother or mother-in-law or widow. Just me. My answering machine was blinking when I got home. 3 messages. I pressed play as I hung up my coat. Mom, it's Michael again. Call me back, please. I'm worried about you.
Delete.
Betty, it's Cassandra. I really think we should talk. I feel terrible about Thanksgiving. Please call me.
Delete.
Hey, Mom. It's Rebecca. Michael called me. He said, you're not answering his calls. What's going on? Call one of us. Okay. I sat heavily on the sofa. Rebecca, too? Michael must be truly concerned if he'd reached out to his sister. They barely spoke to each other most of the time, their relationship strained by old childhood rivalries and Rebecca's outspoken criticism of Michael's materialistic lifestyle. I picked up the phone, then set it back down. What would I say? That after decades of being the family touchstone, the one who kept the peace and made the holidays happen and remembered everyone's birthdays, I was taking a step back, that I was tired of being taken for granted? Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. At the top, I wrote, "What Betty wants." Such a simple question, yet I found myself staring at the blank page, pencil hovering. What did I want? The phone rang again. I glanced at the caller ID. Michael again. This time I answered. Mom, finally. I've been so worried. Are you okay?
I'm fine, Michael.
Just busy. Busy with what? The question irritated me more than it should have. As if I couldn't possibly have a life outside of being available to him and his family. Life, Michael. I've been busy with my life. I kept my voice even. What can I do for you? His pause told me he was thrown by my directness. Well, Cassandra feels terrible about Thanksgiving. She's been trying to reach you to apologize. I got her message. Another pause and nothing. I heard her message. Mom, come on. She's really upset. Can't you just call her back? I thought about all the times I'd smoothed things over for Michael. When he was a child and broke a neighbor's window with a baseball. When he was a teenager and missed curfew. When he was an adult and his first marriage collapsed. Always me stepping in to make peace, to smooth the waters, to take care of everyone's feelings but my own. No, Michael. I can't just call her back. I'm not ready to talk to Cassandra yet, but I need some time.
Can you understand that?
Can you respect it? The silence stretched between us. Finally, he sighed. Fine, take your time. But what did you mean about making changes? What kind of changes? Nothing that concerns you right now. Mom, you're being weird. Just tell me what's going on. I felt a flash of the same resolve that had carried me into Martin Greenberg's office. I don't answer to you, Michael. I'm your mother, not your child. I could practically hear him recoiling on the other end of the line. I know that. I'm just concerned. I appreciate your concern, but it's unnecessary. I'm fine now. I need to go.
I have plans tonight.
Plans? What plans? Good night, Michael. I hung up before he could ask more questions. I didn't actually have plans, but the moment I hung up, I decided to make some. I called Helen. Helen, it's Betty. Is that invitation to the bridge club still open? The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Bridge on Saturdays, a book club at the library on Wednesdays. I even signed up for a watercolor class at the community center on Monday mornings. My phone continued to ring. Michael, Cassandra, occasionally Rebecca or Judith, but I answered only when I felt like it and kept the conversations brief. Yes, I was fine. No, nothing was wrong. Yes, I'd think about Sunday dinner sometime, but I was busy right now. The Tuesday before Christmas, Martin Greenberg called. Everything's filed, Betty. Official as can be. I've mailed you copies for your records. Thank you, Martin. Have you told your family yet? I looked out the window at the light snow falling on my backyard. The old oak tree where we'd once hung a tire swing for the children stood bare against the winter sky. Not yet. After the holidays, I think that's probably wise. These things can be emotional. After we hung up, I pulled out the photo albums again. This time focusing on pictures of Gerald and me before the children came along. Our wedding day, our first apartment, the camping trip in the Adirondacks, where I'd fallen into the lake and Gerald had jumped in after me, even though he was wearing his good watch. I traced his face with my finger. I miss you, I whispered. I wish you were here to see me now. I could almost hear his laugh.
I see you, Bets. I've always seen you.
The next day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to the mall. The holiday crowds were overwhelming, but I pushed through. A woman on a mission. I bought new sheets for my bed. Egyptian cotton, ridiculously expensive, in a deep teal color that would have made Gerald raise his eyebrows and whistle. I bought a cashmere sweater that cost more than I'd ever spent on a single item of clothing. And I bought a small gold pendant in the shape of a bird taking flight. The saleswoman smiled as she wrapped it. For someone special. I touched the delicate box. Yes, for me. When I got home, there was a package on my porch. A Christmas gift from Michael and his family, no doubt. They always sent something practical and impersonal. A robe last year, an electric can opener the year before. I brought it inside, but didn't open it. Instead, I put on my new sweater and fastened the gold bird around my neck. Then I called Judith. Mom, I was just thinking about you. How are you? I'm good, Judith. Really good. Listen, I've been doing some thinking about Christmas. A Christmas came and went without the usual family gathering. For the first time in 45 years, I didn't host a holiday dinner in my home. Instead, I accepted Judith's invitation to fly to Seattle. Tom picked me up at the airport, and for 5 peaceful days, I enjoyed my daughter's company without the tension that Michael and Cassandra inevitably brought. Judith's home was modern and minimalist, perched on a hillside with views of Puget Sound. So different from my traditional colonial in Connecticut, but I found I enjoyed the clean lines and open spaces. You seem different, Mom, Judith said. Our last evening there, we were sitting on her deck, wrapped in blankets despite the chill, watching the lights of the city below. More, I don't know, present. I sipped my wine. Another change. I'd rarely drunk alcohol when Gerald was alive. He'd had concerns about his father's drinking habits and had avoided it himself. I am different, I admitted. Thanksgiving was a wake-up call. Judith's expression darkened. Cassandra was completely out of line. Yes, she was, but in a strange way, I'm grateful. I watched the steam rise from my mug. It forced me to see things clearly. What things? I chose my words carefully. I've spent my life accommodating everyone else. Your father, you children, your spouses. Always smoothing things over, keeping the peace, putting my own feelings last. Judith was quiet for a moment. Dad appreciated you. He always said he couldn't have built his business without your support at home. I know he did. I smiled at the memory of Gerald. But appreciation isn't the same as equality. He made all the big decisions, where we lived, how we spent our money, how we raised you kids. I just went along. And now I met her eyes. Now I'm making my own decisions. When I returned to Connecticut in early January, my house felt different. Not empty as I had feared, but full of possibility. I spent a week rearranging furniture, moving pieces that had sat in the same spots for decades. I donated bags of Gerald's clothes that I'd kept all these years. I even painted the guest room a soft sage green, a color I'd always loved, but Gerald had dismissed as too trendy. Michael called twice during this time. I let most calls go to voicemail, but answered once. "How was your Christmas, Mom?" His voice was strained with forced casualness. "Lovely. Seattle was beautiful. How was yours?"
Fine. Different without you.
"The kids missed your cookies." A pause. "We all did." I continued sorting through a box of old papers at my desk, the phone cradled between my ear and shoulder.
That's nice to hear, Mom.
He hesitated. "I'm sorry about Thanksgiving, about what Cassandra said, about not standing up for you." The apology coming so late felt hollow. "Thank you for saying that, Michael. So we're good now, right? Everything can go back to normal." I put down the stack of papers. "What's normal, Michael?" "Me hosting every holiday, cooking food your wife finds embarrassing, being taken for granted by my own children." "That's not fair, is it?" I cut him off, surprising both of us with my directness. "When was the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for something or to check if I'm still alive, because I didn't immediately return your call." The silence on the other end was telling. "That's what I thought," I said, my voice softer now. "Things can't go back to normal, Michael." Because normal wasn't working for me anymore. After we hung up, I sat for a long time looking at the photo of Gerald on my desk. "Am I being too harsh?" I asked his smiling face. He'd always been the stricter parent, the one who believed in consequences and tough love. I'd been the softie, the one the kids came to when they wanted rules bent or forgiveness granted. The next day, the certified letters I'd sent to each of my children would arrive at their homes. Inside was a brief note explaining that I'd updated my will and that they should contact Martin Greenberg with any questions. I debated telling them in person, but in the end, I decided that this way was cleaner, with less room for arguments or emotional manipulation. I knew they'd be shocked, hurt even, but I also knew it was the right decision for me. The letter to Michael arrived first. His call came that afternoon, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You're selling the house and giving all the money to charity." I'd been expecting this. "Not all of it."
No.
"And not just any charity. I'm establishing a scholarship fund at the community college in your father's name." "But the house was supposed to stay in the family. What about your grandchildren? What about their inheritance?" I took a deep breath. "Michael, you and Cassandra make over $300,000 a year. The twins have college funds that your father and I helped establish. You live in a house 3 times the size of this one. What exactly are you worried about them inheriting?" "That's not the point. This house has been in our family for generations." "2 generations," I corrected. "Your father and I bought it in 1979. It's not exactly a historical landmark." "So, you're just what? Punishing us for Thanksgiving? Is that what this is about?" I closed my eyes, gathering my patience. "This isn't about punishment, Michael. It's about me finally making decisions based on what I want, not what everyone else expects from me." "And what you want is to cut your children out of your will." "What I want," I said carefully, "is for the money from this house to help students who couldn't otherwise afford an education. The way your father helped me finish my degree after we were married. The rest of my assets will still be divided among you three, though I've made some adjustments there as well. Adjustments? What kind of adjustments? That's between me and my lawyer, Michael. If you have questions about the legal details, you can call Martin Greenberg. His number is in the letter. Rebecca called next, surprisingly calm. So, you're finally standing up for yourself, huh?
About time.
Leave it to my youngest to see through to the heart of things. Rebecca had always been the most like me in temperament, but with a backbone I'd only recently discovered in myself. You're not upset about the will?
I asked.
She laughed. Mom, Ethan and I don't need your money. We're fine. And honestly, I think it's badass that you're using it for a scholarship. Dad would be proud. I felt a rush of warmth for my free-spirited youngest. Thank you for understanding. I get it. You spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. Now it's your turn. Judith's response came by email rather than phone. Always the most measured of my children. Mom, while I'm surprised by your decision, I respect that it's yours to make. I only wish you'd talk to us first. Whatever you decide, I love you. I printed her email and tucked it into my desk drawer, touched by her maturity. The days stretched into weeks. January's snow gave way to February's deeper drifts. I settled into new routines: bridge on Saturdays, book club on Wednesdays, watercolor class on Mondays, and dinner with Helen and some of the other women from the community center every other Friday. My life, once centered entirely around my family, expanded to include friendships and activities I'd neglected for years. One snowy afternoon, I came home from the grocery store to find a familiar car in my driveway, Cassandra's sleek silver Mercedes, looking out of place against the modest homes on my street. My heart sank, but I steeled myself as I pulled in behind her. She stepped out of her car as I gathered my grocery bags, her camel hair coat and designer boots a stark contrast to my practical winter parka. "Betty," she said, her voice artificially bright. "We need to talk." I considered my options as I stood in the driveway, grocery bags in hand, snow beginning to fall again. I could ask Cassandra to leave. I could ignore her and walk straight into my house. After all, she hadn't called ahead or asked permission to visit. But I was done running from uncomfortable confrontations. "Come in," I said, my voice neutral. "Help me with these bags." Surprise flickered across her perfectly made-up face as I handed her 2 grocery bags. She followed me up the walkway, her designer boots slipping slightly on the recently shoveled path. Inside, I methodically unpacked the groceries, placing each item in its designated spot. Cassandra stood awkwardly in my kitchen, still holding her designer handbag, looking out of place among my well-worn countertops and outdated appliances. "Would you like some tea?" I asked, more out of ingrained hospitality than genuine desire for her company. "No, thank you." She cleared her throat. "Betty, I think we need to clear the air about Thanksgiving." I closed the refrigerator door and turned to face her. "All right." She seemed thrown by my calm. Perhaps she'd expected tears or anger or desperate attempts to smooth things over. The old Betty's reactions. "I want to apologize for what I said about your cooking. It was thoughtless and hurtful, and I'm truly sorry." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. To my surprise, I found it. Cassandra wasn't a bad person, just entitled and accustomed to getting her way. "Thank you for the apology." She fidgeted with the clasp of her handbag. "So, we're good now?" I almost laughed. "Is that why you're here? To get absolution, so everything can go back to the way it was?" "Well, because things aren't going back, Cassandra. Thanksgiving wasn't just about you insulting my cooking. It was about years of feeling unappreciated and taken for granted by my own family." Her expression hardened slightly. "This is about the will, isn't it? Michael told me what you're doing." And there it was, the real reason for her visit. My will is my business. It's family business. That house has been in the family for generations. 2 generations, I corrected her just as I had Michael. And it's my house, not the family's. But think about the twins. Their inheritance. Let me stop you right there. I leaned against the counter, suddenly tired of this conversation. The twins have visited this house exactly 4 times in the past year, all for holidays. They spend the entire time on their phones. They've never once expressed any interest in family history or traditions, and they have college funds that will cover any school they choose to attend. Cassandra's cheeks flushed pink. That's not fair. They're teenagers. Yes, they are. And teenagers reflect the values they're taught at home. The implication hung in the air between us. Cassandra's flush deepened. I didn't come here to fight. Then why did you come, Cassandra? Really? She set her bag on the counter, a gesture of settling in. Michael is upset. More upset than I've seen him in years. He feels like you're punishing him, punishing all of us for one bad holiday. I shook my head. This isn't about punishment. It's about me finally putting myself first after decades of putting everyone else's needs before my own. By giving away the family home? By cutting your children out of your will? I'm not cutting them out, I said patiently. I'm adjusting my estate to reflect my values. Most of my assets will still go to my children. The house will fund scholarships for students who need financial help. Students like I was before I met Gerald. Cassandra's expression shifted, a calculation happening behind her eyes. What if we bought the house from you, Michael and I? You could use that money for your scholarship, and the house would stay in the family. I hadn't expected this. You want to buy my house? Why not? It's a valuable property in a good neighborhood. We could use it as a vacation home or rent it out. The twins could even live here when they go to college. The idea of my home, the home where I'd raised my children, where Gerald and I had built our life together, being turned into a rental property, or worse, a crash pad for the twins in college, made something twist inside me.
No.
Cassandra blinked.
No. Just like that. Just like that.
But this house isn't an investment property, Cassandra. It's my home, and I've decided what will happen to it when I'm gone. She stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. You've changed. Yes, I agreed. I have. We stood in silence for a moment, the grandfather clock in the living room ticking steadily, marking the passage of time. Finally, Cassandra picked up her bag. I should go. I nodded and walked her to the door. As she stepped onto the porch, she turned back. For what it's worth, I really am sorry about Thanksgiving. Not because of the will or any of this, but because what I said was cruel. Your cooking isn't embarrassing. It's familiar, comfortable. Something in her voice caught my attention. A vulnerability I hadn't noticed before. I said my mother taught me to make that stuffing and her mother taught her. Cassandra nodded, a strange expression on her face. My mother couldn't cook. We ate takeout most nights. The admission surprised me. In 15 years, Cassandra had never mentioned her mother except to say she died young. I didn't know that. She shrugged, trying to appear casual, but I caught a glimpse of old pain there. It wasn't a big deal. We managed. As she walked to her car, I found myself wondering about Cassandra's childhood, about the experiences that had shaped her into the woman she'd become. I'd never really tried to know her beyond her role as Michael's wife, just as she'd never tried to know me beyond my role as his mother. That evening, I sat in Gerald's chair by the fireplace, a cup of tea growing cold beside me. As I thought about families, the ones we're born into and the ones we create, about patterns that repeat across generations unless someone has the courage to break them. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Rebecca, hey mom. Just checking in.
How are you?
For once, I didn't offer platitudes or deflections. I had an interesting visit from Cassandra today. Rebecca groaned. Let me guess. She tried to talk you out of the scholarship thing, among other things. But something happened at the end. She seemed, human. Rebecca laughed. Miracles never cease. We talked for nearly an hour, longer than we had in years, about Rebecca's work, about her partner Ethan, about the manuscript she was working on in her spare time. Real conversation, not just surface-level updates. As we were saying goodbye, Rebecca hesitated. Mom, I'm sorry I haven't been around much these past few years. I've been wrapped up in my own life.
We all have, I said.
But we can do better going forward. After we hung up, I pulled out my notebook again, the one where I'd started writing What Betty Wants. The page was no longer blank. I'd been adding to it over the past weeks, building a vision for my future that was entirely my own. I added a new item, family healing on my terms. The next morning, I called Martin Greenberg. Betty, how are you? I'm well, Martin. I've been thinking about the scholarship fund. I'd like to set it up now, not just in my will. I want to see it in action while I'm still alive. That's certainly possible. We'd need to discuss the financial implications, but I have the money, I interrupted. I've been looking at my investments. I can fund the first scholarship this fall. There was surprise in his voice. Well, that's wonderful, but what brought this on? I looked out my kitchen window at the oak tree in the backyard, its bare branches dusted with snow. Let's just say I'm tired of waiting to make a difference. 2 days later, I received a large envelope in the mail from Connecticut Community College. Inside was information about establishing an endowed scholarship along with a handwritten note from the development director expressing enthusiasm about the Gerald Harmon Memorial Scholarship Fund. As I read through the materials, I felt a rightness settle over me. This was what Gerald would have wanted. His legacy helping others the way he'd always helped me. Not a house preserved as a monument to the past, but a living tribute that would grow and change with each student it supported. That evening, Michael called again. Cassandra told me about her visit, about your conversation. I braced myself for another argument, but his voice was subdued. She said something that made me think about how she never really knew her mother and how she's never really known you either. And maybe I haven't either. The Connecticut winter gradually gave way to spring. Crocuses pushed through the melting snow in my front yard. The bulbs Gerald and I had planted together decades ago still faithfully emerged each year. I found myself watching their progress each morning from my kitchen window, a cup of coffee warming my hands. Michael's call had ended with a tentative invitation to dinner. Just him, no Cassandra, no twins. Somewhere neutral, he'd said. Maybe that Italian place downtown you used to like. I'd agreed, curious about this new version of my son, who admitted he might not know his own mother. We met on a Tuesday evening in early April. Michael was already seated when I arrived, dressed in the business suit he'd probably worn to work. He stood when he saw me, an old-fashioned courtesy his father had taught him. "Mom," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "You look nice." I'd worn my new cashmere sweater and the gold bird pendant. "Thank you." After we ordered, an awkward silence fell between us. Michael fiddled with his water glass, turning it in slow circles. So, he finally said, "You're really going through with this scholarship thing?" "I am. In fact, I've already started the process. The first Gerald Harmon Memorial Scholarship will be awarded this fall." He nodded slowly. "And the house will eventually be sold to fund more scholarships, but not yet. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon." Michael took a sip of his water. "I've been thinking about what you said, about not appreciating you, about taking you for granted." I waited, giving him space to continue. "When Dad died, I guess I just assumed you'd keep doing what you'd always done. Keep the house going. Keep the holidays happening. Keep being Mom." He looked up at me. "I never really thought about what you might want or need." "No," I agreed. "You didn't." He winced slightly at my directness. "I'm trying to apologize." "I know, and I appreciate that. But I don't need you to just feel bad, Michael. I need you to understand." Our food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. I watched as Michael cut into his chicken parmesan, a dish he'd ordered since he was a teenager. "Tell me what you want me to understand," he said finally. I took a breath, organizing my thoughts. "When your father died, everyone was concerned about how I'd manage financially, practically. No one, not you, not your sisters, ever asked how I'd manage emotionally." I twisted my wedding ring, still on my finger after all these years. I lost my partner of 47 years, the person I'd built my entire adult life with. And suddenly, I was just the widowed mother, the grandmother, the holiday host. Like my only value was in what I could still provide for the family. Michael had stopped eating, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth. "I never thought of it that way." "I know you didn't, but Thanksgiving, what Cassandra said, and the fact that you didn't defend me, it just crystallized something I'd been feeling for a long time, that I'd become invisible, a convenience." He set his fork down. "That's not how I see you. Isn't it?" When was the last time you asked me about my day? About my interests? About my life outside of being your mother? The question hung between us. I could see him struggling to come up with an answer.
That's what I thought, I said gently.
I'm sorry, he said, and this time I believed him. I know you are, and I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because I want things to be different going forward. He nodded. I want that too. We ate in silence for a few minutes, but it was a more comfortable silence now. So tell me, Michael said eventually, what are you interested in these days? Besides shaking up the family with your estate planning. I smiled despite myself. I've been taking a watercolor class. I'm terrible at it, but I enjoy it. You're painting? I didn't know you were artistic.
Neither did I.
But Helen, my friend from down the street, convinced me to try it. I took a sip of my wine. I've also joined a bridge club and a book club. Wow, you're busier than I am. I doubt that. But yes, I've been making an effort to build a life that's about more than just waiting for visits from my children and grandchildren. Michael had the grace to look slightly abashed. The twins have been asking about you. They want to know why you haven't been around. What did you tell them? That you've been busy, that you're finding yourself. He gave a small smile. Emma thought that was cool. She said, you're like that movie character who goes to Italy to eat pasta and find herself. I laughed. I'm a bit old for that, but I appreciate the comparison. As we finished our meal, Michael grew serious again. I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately, about the kind of husband he was to you. This surprised me. What about him? Well, you said he made all the big decisions. Where you lived, how you raised us. I always saw your relationship as this perfect partnership. But it wasn't always equal, was it? I considered my answer carefully. Your father was a good man, a loving husband, but he was also a man of his generation. He expected certain things from a wife, and I provided them. It wasn't that he was domineering. It was more that it never occurred to either of us that there was another way to be married. Do you regret it, being with him? Never, I said firmly. I loved your father with all my heart. But if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I might suggest she speak up a bit more, assert her own wishes occasionally. Michael nodded thoughtfully. Like you're doing now. Exactly like I'm doing now. After dinner, Michael walked me to my car. As we reached it, he hesitated, then pulled me into a hug. It was awkward. We hadn't been a particularly demonstrative family since the children had grown up, but it was genuine. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Michael. As I drove home, I felt lighter somehow, not because everything was fixed. One dinner couldn't undo years of established patterns, but because for the first time, I felt seen by my son. Not just as his mother, but as Betty Harmon, a woman with her own wants and needs and dreams. The next morning, I received an email from the development office at Connecticut Community College. They wanted to schedule a meeting to finalize the details of the scholarship fund. As I replied, setting up an appointment for the following week, I felt a surge of excitement. This was really happening, my vision taking concrete form in the world. That afternoon, I took a walk around my neighborhood, enjoying the early spring sunshine. The Bradford pear trees that line my street were just beginning to bloom, their white flowers stark against the still bare branches of other trees. I found myself in front of the elementary school Michael and his sisters had attended, its red brick facade unchanged in the decades since they'd been students there. The playground equipment had been updated. No more metal slides that burned the backs of legs in summer, but the playing fields where I'd watched countless soccer games remained the same. As I stood there, memories washing over me, my phone rang. It was Judith. Mom, I just got off the phone with Michael. He told me about your dinner. Did he now? He said you were different, more confident, that you told him some hard truths. I smiled to myself. I suppose I did.
Good.
The simple word held a wealth of approval. It's about time. You sound like Rebecca. Judith laughed. Well, she's right sometimes. We chatted for a few more minutes about ordinary things. Her gallery, Tom's job, Seattle weather. As we were about to hang up, Judith said, I've been thinking about coming for a visit. Just me, not Tom. Maybe stay for a week or so. Would that be okay? The old Betty would have immediately said yes. Would have started planning menus and cleaning the guest room before the call even ended. The new Betty took a moment to consider what she wanted. I'd like that very much, I said finally. But fair warning, I have bridge on Saturdays and watercolor on Mondays, and I'm helping organize a fundraiser for the community center. Judith laughed again. Who are you, and what have you done with my mother? As I walked home, I thought about her question.
Who was I now?
Not just Gerald's widow, not just Michael, Judith, and Rebecca's mother. Not just Emma and Ethan's grandmother. I was Betty Harmon, 68 years old, watercolor painter, however amateur, bridge player, scholarship founder, woman finding her voice after decades of quiet. When I reached my house, I saw a car parked in the driveway. Not Cassandra's silver Mercedes this time, but a more modest sedan. And sitting on my porch steps was Rebecca, a duffel bag at her feet and a tentative smile on her face. Surprise, she said, standing as I approached. I was in the neighborhood. Well, I was in the state for a conference in Hartford. I thought I'd stop by and see this new assertive mother of mine that Michael's been telling everyone about. 6 months after that fateful Thanksgiving, I stood at the podium in a small auditorium at Connecticut Community College, adjusting the microphone. The room was filled with faculty, administrators, students, and my family. All 3 of my children, plus Judith's husband, Tom. Even the twins had come, though they fidgeted in their seats, clearly wishing to be elsewhere. Cassandra sat beside Michael, her expression unreadable. We'd reached a tentative truce over the past months, built on a new understanding that had begun with her unexpected vulnerability in my kitchen that snowy day. We would never be close. Our personalities and values were too different. But we had found a way to be in the same room without tension crackling between us. Good afternoon, I began, my voice stronger than I'd expected. I'm Betty Harmon, and today I'm honored to announce the establishment of the Gerald Harmon Memorial Scholarship Fund. As I spoke about Gerald, his belief in education, his support of my own journey to finish my degree while raising small children, his generosity to those in need, I found myself remembering not just the husband and father he had been, but the young man I had fallen in love with. His laugh, the way he'd kissed the top of my head when he walked by, his passion for justice and fairness. Education changed my life, I continued. And it changed Gerald's. We both came from families where college wasn't a given. We both had to work our way through school, and we both believed that knowledge is the most powerful tool a person can possess. I looked out at the audience, at the sea of faces watching me, some bored, some curious, some moved. This scholarship is Gerald's legacy, but it's also mine, a statement of my values and my hopes for the future. Each year, it will provide full tuition for one student who demonstrates academic promise and financial need. A student who, like Gerald and I once were, is willing to work hard for a chance at a better life. After the ceremony, as people mingled over refreshments in the lobby, the college president introduced me to the first recipient of the scholarship, a young woman named Maya Chen, whose parents had immigrated from Taiwan and who wanted to become a physical therapist. Mrs. Harmon, she said, shaking my hand firmly, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. I was going to have to take a year off to save more money, but now I can continue straight through. Looking at her bright, determined face, I felt a sense of rightness wash over me. This was exactly what Gerald would have wanted. What I wanted. You don't need to thank me, I told her. Just make the most of it. Later, as we gathered at a restaurant near the college for an early dinner, I looked around at my family. Really looked at them. Judith, her auburn hair now streaked with natural gray, deep in conversation with Rebecca about a book they'd both read. Michael, more relaxed than I'd seen him in years, laughing at something Tom had said. The twins, still on their phones, but occasionally looking up to engage when addressed directly. And Cassandra, who caught my eye across the table and gave me a small, genuine smile. That was a lovely ceremony, Betty, she said when we found ourselves alone at the table a few minutes later, the others having stepped outside or gone to the restroom. Gerald would have been proud. Thank you, I said, meaning it. That means a lot. She twisted her napkin in her hands. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about not really knowing you, about taking you for granted. I waited, giving her space to continue. My mother died when I was 11, she said finally. Cancer, it was quick. Diagnosed in February, gone by June.
After that, it was just my dad and me. And he was distant, working all the time.
We never really recovered as a family. This explains so much about Cassandra, her perfectionism, her need for control, her focus on appearances. I'm sorry, I said. That must have been incredibly difficult. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. When I married Michael, I thought I was getting the perfect family, the kind I'd always wanted, and you were this ideal mother figure. Always there, always dependable. But I never really saw you as a person, just as a role. And now I see that was unfair to both of us. She looked up at me. I'm trying to do better. Before I could respond, the others returned to the table. The moment of connection between us passed, but was not forgotten. That night, back in my house, still my house, though I thought of it differently, as a temporary stewardship rather than a permanent anchor, I sat in Gerald's chair with a cup of tea, reflecting on the day. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Proud of you today, Mom. Dad would have been too. I smiled, typing back a thank you. Another buzz, this time from Judith, flying home tomorrow. This visit was good. Let's not wait so long next time. And finally, one from Michael. The twins can't stop talking about their badass grandma who started a scholarship. Your influence is rubbing off on them. I set the phone down, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the tea. 6 months ago, I'd stood in this same kitchen, humiliated and hurt, feeling invisible to my own family. Now I was badass grandma, scholarship founder, a woman who spoke her truth. The next morning dawned clear and bright, a perfect early fall day. I had no specific plans. Bridge club wasn't until Saturday, and the watercolor class had ended for the season. But the day felt full of possibility nonetheless. I made my coffee and carried it out to the back porch, something I rarely did despite having lived in this house for over 40 years. The morning air was crisp, the oak tree in the yard just beginning to turn gold at its edges. As I sat there, I found myself thinking about that Thanksgiving again, about Cassandra's cutting words, about Michael's silence, about my own moment of clarity in the kitchen afterward. If it hadn't happened, if Cassandra had kept her opinions to herself, if we'd had just another holiday dinner like all the ones before it, where would I be now? Still the accommodating mother and grandmother, still putting everyone else's needs before my own. Still feeling vaguely dissatisfied, but unable to name why. Sometimes the deepest wounds become unexpected gifts. Not because the hurt isn't real, it is, but because they force us to look at our lives with new eyes, to make changes we might otherwise never have found the courage to make. I sipped my coffee, watching a pair of cardinals flit among the branches of the oak tree. Gerald had loved cardinals, had always pointed them out to me on our walks. Look, Bets, he'd say. There's good luck. I see it, I whispered now, raising my mug in a small salute to the birds, to Gerald, to the woman I had become in his absence. The phone rang inside, probably Helen, wanting to confirm our lunch plans for tomorrow. I didn't rush to answer it. It would wait. The world would wait. For now, I was content to sit in the morning sunshine, drinking my coffee, making plans for a future that was entirely my own. When Cassandra had called my cooking embarrassing that Thanksgiving, she couldn't have known she was lighting a fuse that would transform not just me, but our entire family. The call I made the next day to Martin Greenberg to set in motion the changes to my will had indeed been one she would never forget. Not because it punished her, but because it had forced us all to see each other clearly for the first time. And for that unexpected gift, I was grateful. If my story touched your heart today, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Sometimes the most powerful change happens when we finally stand up for ourselves. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've ever had to make a difficult choice to reclaim your own.